They didn't forget. That was the worst part. If they'd forgotten, I could at least lie to myself. But they knew. They just didn't care enough. I set the table by the window, like I always do on my birthday. The sun had already dipped low, throwing a long golden stripe across the floor. I laid out the good china, the cloth napkins, white with little embroidered roses. Took the chicken out of the oven, opened the wine. The cake stood in the center, a simple vanilla sponge with lemon frosting. I'd made it myself. I'd done everything myself, like every year. But this time, I'd hoped it would be different. Not because they promised. No, no one promised. But because last week, Nora called to say she might stop by if the kids' schedules align. That was her wording, if they align. As if her mother's birthday were a puzzle piece in a crowded planner. And Thomas, my son-in-law, texted once this month, asking if I could still help them cover the water bill. I did. Of course I did. I had no expectations. That's what I told myself all day. I boiled the potatoes and cleaned the table without imagining anything. But I still set out 4 plates, just in case. When the clock struck 6, I put on my navy sweater and pearl earrings. I don't even know why. No one would see them. The earrings were a gift from my late husband, Arthur, 40 years ago. For my beautiful girl who always forgets she's beautiful, he used to say. I never really believed it. But I wore them anyway, 6:15. I checked my phone. 1 message. My heart lifted, only to drop again when I saw it was from the pharmacy, reminding me to refill my prescription. I stood for a long time in the middle of the kitchen, holding the phone like it was a ticking clock. Then I put it back on the charger. No calls, no texts. 7 o'clock. Still nothing. It wasn't anger I felt. Not first. It was a kind of slow, sinking chill. Like I was watching myself from the ceiling. Watching an old woman in a clean kitchen with too much food and not enough company. I sat down. I poured the wine. I ate the chicken. It was slightly overcooked, but still tender. I added a small scoop of potatoes and gravy. Took a bite of the salad. The fork trembled in my hand. I hadn't realized how quiet the house was until I heard my own chewing. At 7:45, I walked to the cake. Just 1 candle. I lit it. I didn't sing. I just looked at the flame for a while. Then I blew it out. No wishes. I'm too old for wishes. I cut a slice, a neat one, like Arthur used to prefer, and placed it on one of the unused plates. And then I sat back down and ate it slowly, like someone might knock at the door any minute, like someone might remember. But no one came. No one called. I cleaned up in silence, put away the leftovers, washed the dishes, took off the earrings, folded the napkins, put them back in the drawer. At 10 o'clock, I opened the hallway closet and stared at my winter coat. The one Nora said was too old-fashioned. She hadn't known I'd bought it for her wedding, the one she never invited me to. It'll just be a small thing, she said at the time. Nothing formal. It had been at a winery in Michigan with 80 guests. I turned off the lights, climbed into bed, set the alarm even though I had nowhere to go. 74 today, and not even a text. The next morning, I didn't make coffee. That might sound small, but for me, it wasn't. I'd been making coffee every morning for the last 50 years, ever since Arthur brought home that shiny percolator from Sears. Even after he passed, I kept the ritual. 1 cup, black, with half a spoon of sugar. But not today. Today I didn't see the point. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the spot where the cake had been. The clean counter felt almost accusatory, like it knew something I didn't. At 8:12, the phone rang. The old landline. Not the mobile. the landline that only a few still used. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey, Mom, just checking in." It was Nora. Her voice was bright, breezy, like she'd forgotten something small, like a doctor's appointment, not a human being. "You didn't call yesterday," I said. A pause. "Yeah, I know," she said. "Sorry about that. Things got crazy with the twins, and Thomas had a client dinner, and then it just got late. I figured I'd call today." I didn't say anything. What could I say? "Did you do anything?" she asked. "For your birthday, I mean." "I made dinner," I said. "Set the table. Lit a candle." "Ah, Mom." Her voice softened slightly, then turned brisk again. "Listen, would you be able to watch the kids on Saturday? Just for a few hours. Thomas has a golf thing, and I have a spa appointment with Marlene." I looked at the phone like it had turned into something foul. "Nora," I said calmly, "I won't be available Saturday." There was a long silence. "What do you mean? You always—" "I won't be available." She laughed nervously. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "I'm just not volunteering anymore." "Volunteering?" Now she sounded genuinely confused. "Yes," I said. "All these years, I thought I was part of this family, that my time, my cooking, my money, that it meant something. But yesterday made things clear. I'm not mad, Nora. I'm just tired. I think it's time I stopped showing up where I'm not wanted." Another silence. "That's not fair," she said finally. "You know we love you." "No," I said, my voice firm. "I know you love the idea of me. The one who says yes. The one who drops everything. The one who never says a word." "That's not true," she said, but her voice was quiet now, unsure. I didn't argue. There was no point. The weight that had pressed on my chest for years had shifted. Not lifted, not yet, but cracked open. "I have to go," I said. "Wait, Mom." I hung up. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. Instead of coffee, I boiled water and made tea. Chamomile, from a box that had been in the cabinet too long. It tasted dusty, but comforting. I sipped it slowly and watched the squirrels outside scramble over the fence. The mail came at 10, mostly flyers and a bill from the gas company, but also a card. My hands paused when I saw the handwriting, loopy, round letters in blue ink. To Grandma. I opened it carefully, like it might break. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper. A note. "Happy birthday, Grandma. I hope your day was amazing. Sorry we didn't call last night. I had a stupid biology test. I promise I'll come over soon and bring chocolate muffins. Love you forever. Ellie." Ellie, my granddaughter. 14 and still remembers. Still writes. Still loves without agenda. I touched the note with my fingertips, tracing the hearts she'd drawn around her name. Something stung in my eyes, but I blinked it away. Not all was lost. Later, I took out the box from under the bed, the one with receipts, check stubs, and bank forms. I hadn't opened it in a long time, hadn't wanted to look at what I'd given away. There were checks for Nora's first apartment, school fees, wedding contributions, thousands, maybe more. I didn't total it. I just stared at the sheer weight of it. And then I pulled out a clean sheet of paper, started a list, not of money spent, but of things I would no longer do. Say yes out of guilt. Apologize for being lonely. Hide my feelings so others can stay comfortable. I wrote until the page filled. Then I folded it and put it on top of the box. No more. The list stayed on my nightstand that whole week. I didn't read it again, not yet, but I liked knowing it was there. A quiet boundary drawn in ink. By Thursday, Nora hadn't called back. Not to apologize, not to argue. Nothing. And I didn't reach out either. For the first time, silence felt less like a punishment and more like protection. That afternoon, I decided to go into town. I hadn't taken the bus in years. It rattled more than I remembered, and the driver had a thick accent I didn't recognize. But the view was the same. Old brick storefronts, wide sidewalks, the bakery with the striped awning. I used to bring Nora there when she was small. She'd always choose the chocolate eclair and eat the frosting first. I got off 2 stops early just to stretch my legs. The fall air was crisp, not yet cold, and the leaves on Maple Street had turned to rust and gold. I walked slowly, letting my joints complain until I reached the bank. Inside, the air was overconditioned and smelled faintly of printer ink. A young man in a gray sweater greeted me. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "Yes," I said. "I need to make some changes to my account." He typed something on his keyboard. "Do you have ID?" I handed it over, watching his eyes flick between me and the screen. "Edna Merrick," he read aloud. "Yes, you have several scheduled transfers. 1 weekly, 3 monthly. 2 linked cards, both authorized to Honora Henderson." I nodded. "I'd like to cancel them all." He blinked. "All of them?" "Yes." He hesitated. "Some of these look like payments for utilities, school fees." "I know what they are," I said calmly. He cleared his throat and began typing again. "We'll need your signature on a few documents and a brief consultation with the manager, since you're altering a linked account." "That's fine." They ushered me into a small room with glass walls. A woman named Teresa came in, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes and a nervous smile. She asked me gently if everything was all right. "Yes," I said. "I'm just making some corrections to a long-standing mistake." She didn't push, just nodded and walked me through the forms. An hour later, it was done. Nora's cards were deauthorized. The transfers were gone. When I stepped outside, the sun was still shining, and I realized I wasn't even tired. I felt clear, not triumphant, not angry, just clear. I walked back toward the bus stop, stopping briefly at the bakery. The same woman worked there, Evelyn, with her bright lipstick and tired eyes. She looked up and smiled. "Edna? Haven't seen you in a while." "I've been hibernating," I said. "But today felt like a day for lemon cookies." She packed a small box for me, then added 2 extra. "Birthday week, right?" I blinked. "You remember?" "Of course," she said. "You come in every October." That small kindness almost did me in. I bit the inside of my cheek to hold steady, nodded my thanks, and paid in cash. At home, I made tea and sat in the living room with the box of cookies. The house was quiet, but I didn't mind it now. It felt like mine again, not a waiting room for calls that never came. Around 6, the phone rang. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. "Grandma?" Ellie's voice was bright. "Can I come over tomorrow after school?" "Of course you can, sweetheart. I baked something, not as good as yours, but I want you to try it." I smiled. "Then I'll be here with an empty plate." "I love you," she said. And just like that, my heart softened. Some things didn't need fixing. Some things were already just right. I laid the good napkins out again. Just 2 this time. Ellie arrived at 4:45 the next afternoon, all limbs and breathless excitement. Her backpack swung behind her like a tail, and she held a foil-covered dish like it was a treasure. "I made brownies," she declared, eyes shining. "No nuts, just like you like." She looked so much like Nora at that age it stopped me cold for a moment. Same round cheeks, same darting glances when she was proud but unsure. But Ellie didn't carry the same edge, not yet. I took the dish from her hands. "They smell wonderful." She beamed. I used real butter, not the margarine Mom buys. We sat in the kitchen. I sliced the brownies carefully, placing 2 on a plate and sliding them across to her. Ellie always ate fast, like life was in a rush. I sipped my tea and watched her. She told me about school, a history quiz, a teacher who wore the same cardigan 4 days a week, a new boy who pulled her braid in math class. She wrinkled her nose when she said his name. Then she stopped mid-sentence, looked at me more carefully. "Grandma, are you okay?" I paused. "Why do you ask?" "You seem different," she said, and then looked guilty. "Not bad different. Just like something happened." I wanted to lie, say I was just tired. But she was old enough for honesty, and maybe the only one who deserved it. "Nothing happened," I said. Or maybe too much happened for too long, and I finally decided to stop pretending it was fine. Ellie blinked. "Because of Mom?" I didn't answer. That was answer enough. She pushed her plate away. "She said you were being dramatic." That stung, not because of the word, but because I knew how often I'd worked to be exactly the opposite. "I'm not mad at your mother," I said gently. "I just decided I don't need to explain myself anymore. Not to anyone who only shows up with empty hands and a full list of needs." Ellie picked at a crumb. "She thinks you'll come around." "She's probably right," I said. "That's what I always did. But not this time." "Good," she whispered. Then louder, "You don't deserve that. You're the kindest person I know." It was such a simple sentence, but I felt it settle into something deep, a place in me that had gone hollow from giving. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Thank you." She smiled, then looked serious again. "Are you going to cut her off completely? Like forever?" "I don't know," I said. "But I know I need space, and she needs to feel it, not just brush past it like she always does." Ellie nodded slowly. "She's really mad." "I'm sure she is." "She said you embarrassed her at the bank." I couldn't help it. I laughed, a low, tired laugh that filled the room like wood smoke. "She embarrassed herself," I said. "I just stopped funding it." Ellie grinned. "You're kind of a badass." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that what the kids are calling it now?" "Yup." We washed dishes together. She insisted on drying. At one point, she hummed to herself, a tune I recognized from some old cartoons she used to watch at my house. Her world was still soft around the edges. I wanted to keep it that way, at least for a little longer. As she tied her sneakers by the door, she turned and asked, "Will you come to my school recital next week? I have a solo." "Of course," I said. "You tell me the time. I'll be there." She hesitated. "Even if Mom's there?" I looked at her squarely. "Especially if she's there." That seemed to settle something for her. She kissed my cheek, told me she loved me, and disappeared down the porch steps with that same chaotic energy she always had. After she left, I sat back at the table, hands wrapped around a mug of now cold tea. The kitchen still smelled like chocolate, and for once, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Saturday morning arrived with a soft drizzle, the kind that makes everything look like it's been painted in watercolor. I opened the curtains and watched the rain streak down the glass, gray and quiet. I wasn't expecting anyone, and that was the best part. At 9:03, my phone buzzed. I ignored it. By 9:10, it buzzed again. This time, I checked. Nora. "Mom, please. We need to talk. Can you call me back?" I made toast instead. She'd never asked if I was okay. Not really. Not once in that message. An hour later, the landline rang. I let it ring 4 times before picking up. "Hello?" It was Thomas. "Edna, hey, sorry to bother you. I just, Nora's a bit upset, and I thought maybe I could. He trailed off like he'd lost his map. I waited. She's just confused, that's all, he continued. She doesn't understand why you're freezing everyone out. You've always been generous. Ah, there it was. I haven't frozen anyone, I said calmly. I just stopped funding bad behavior. He cleared his throat. Look, I know things have been strained, but we really could use some help this month. The mortgage is. I'm not your banker, Thomas. Silence. I didn't fill it. Okay, he said finally, tight-lipped. Guess that's your decision. It is. Well, happy birthday. Belated, I guess. Thanks. He hung up without another word. I made more tea. Took out the good honey this time, the kind I usually save for guests, but I figured I counted now too. The doorbell rang just after noon. It was Nora. She stood on the porch without an umbrella, her coat spotted with rain. She looked thinner than last time I saw her. Tired. But her expression wasn't regretful. It was tight. Defensive. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Can I come in? She asked. Depends why you're here. She frowned. To talk. I let her in, slowly, and we moved to the living room. She sat on the edge of the couch like it might reject her. I stayed standing. I don't understand what's happening, she began. You cut off the cards, canceled the transfers, and now Ellie says you've been talking like you're done with us. I said nothing. It's not fair, she added. No, I said. What's not fair is giving and being forgotten on your birthday. What's not fair is raising a daughter who thinks love comes with conditions, and that those conditions should always benefit her. Nora's mouth dropped open slightly. That's not true. You didn't call, you didn't send a text, you didn't even tell the kids. You just erased me for the day. I was busy. It was my birthday. Her jaw clenched. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. We sat in silence. The rain tapped at the windows. Finally, she said, I guess you've made your point. It's not about a point, I said. It's about dignity. Mine. She looked down, picked at her fingernail. I always assumed you were okay with it, she mumbled. Helping, I mean. You never said no. That was my mistake, I said. But I'm correcting it now. Nora looked up. Her eyes were tired. So that's it? You're done with us? No, I said. I'm done being invisible. She blinked hard. Once. I'll figure something out, she said stiffly, standing up. I hope you do. At the door, she paused. Ellie. She loves you, you know. I know, I said. That's why she's still welcome here. Nora flinched like I'd slapped her, but I didn't apologize. She walked out into the drizzle without a word. I closed the door gently behind her and locked it. Then I returned to the kitchen, poured myself another cup of tea, and finally exhaled. Sunday morning, I didn't turn on the phone. I let it sit there on the table, dark and silent, like an object from another life. I made oatmeal the way I liked it, with cream and brown sugar, and ate it by the window, watching the neighbor's dog chase leaves. Peaceful, soft, a day without demands. Around noon, the mail arrived. I shuffled through flyers, bills, and a single envelope with unfamiliar handwriting. I slid it open carefully. Inside, a birthday card. Plain, store-bought, with a gold ribbon printed on the front. But the message inside was handwritten, hesitant. Dear Edna, I'm sorry we didn't do better. You deserve better. Thomas. No excuses, no plea for money, just that. It was more than I expected. I placed it on the mantel beside Ellie's note. That afternoon I took out the photo albums, not out of nostalgia, but inventory. There were so many pictures of Nora, her ballet recitals, her high school graduation, her wedding. Pictures I'd taken, printed, paid for. I flipped past them slowly, watching the years turn like pages. And then I found the one that stopped me. A photo of Arthur and me in front of our first house. He had his arm around my shoulder. I looked thin, a little overwhelmed, but proud. There was something in our eyes, something solid. He'd built the back porch with his own hands. I remember the sound of hammering, the smell of sawdust, the way he cursed when he hit his thumb. But he never gave up. That was the thing about Arthur. He never gave up on what mattered. Later that evening, the doorbell rang. It was Ellie, holding a folder under one arm and 2 grocery bags. "You said you were low on soup," she said, brushing past me like she lived there. And I printed out the recital info. "You said to remind you." I smiled. "I did. You're very efficient." She placed the bags on the counter and started unpacking. Chicken broth, crackers, apples, a bar of dark chocolate. "I used my allowance," she said proudly. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." She moved around the kitchen with a confidence I hadn't seen before. It reminded me of myself, decades ago, before I learned how small a woman's space can get when she keeps giving it away. "Did you talk to Mom?" she asked finally. I did. "Was it bad?" I hesitated. It was honest. Ellie nodded, like she understood. "She's mad at me," she said. "Said I'm taking sides." "You're not," I said. "You're being decent." She took a deep breath. "Sometimes I don't know what to do. I love her. But I see things." "I know," I said gently. "You're allowed to see what you see." She took out the recital flyer and smoothed it flat. "It's next Thursday. 7 p.m., don't be late." I wouldn't miss it. She looked up at me. "Can you sit in the front row?" "I'll sit wherever you want me." She smiled, a small, grateful smile. Then she hugged me, not the quick, polite kind, but the kind you lean into, the kind that says I'm still here. After she left, I made tea and sat with the card from Thomas again. It was small, but it was something. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not grand gestures, not dramatic apologies, but tiny cracks letting light through. I wasn't looking to fix everything, just myself, and I was starting to feel whole again. Monday morning brought sun, sharp and clear. I hadn't seen light like that in weeks, the kind that makes everything look more honest, less forgiving. It made the dust on the windowsill stand out. The tiny chips in the teacup I refused to throw away, the creases on my own hands. I spent most of the day cleaning, not out of anger or ritual, but something quieter, something like reclaiming. I scrubbed the baseboards, wiped the glass on the front door, took down the curtains, and washed them. There's a certain kind of calm that comes when your world feels like it's finally yours again. After lunch, I opened the old chest in the hallway closet, the one with Arthur's tools, a few photo albums, and the folder marked House Papers. I hadn't looked in that folder in a long time, not since he passed. Inside were deeds, utility records, a life insurance policy we never had to use. And tucked between it all, his letters. Arthur was a letter writer, not poems, not speeches, just small notes, scribbled on yellow-lined paper, left in drawers or coat pockets. I found one folded in 4, brittle at the edges. "Edna, if I'm not around when you find this, remember, you don't owe anyone more than they're willing to give back. You were always too generous. Promise me you won't let that become your weakness. I love you. A." I sat down on the floor, right there in the hallway, and read it again. then again. Then I pressed it flat and slid it into the frame of a picture near the kitchen, one of him and Ellie planting flowers together. She must have been 7. He was already losing weight, already pale. But he was smiling. I missed him more sharply than I had in months. He would have known what to do. He always did. That night, I took the folded list from my nightstand, the one I wrote the day after my birthday, and added another line. 4. Stop pretending grief ends just because people get tired of hearing it. Tuesday was quiet. No calls, no visitors. I walked to the pharmacy and back. The clerk, a boy with too much cologne and a kind smile, asked how my week was going. Better, I said. Better than it's been. When I got home, I found a small package on the porch. No return address, but familiar handwriting. Inside, a jar of homemade jam. Strawberry, Arthur's favorite, and a card. Thought you might like a little sweet back in your kitchen. You deserve it. Ellie. I pressed the card to my chest, then went inside and put on the kettle. That evening, as I spread jam on toast, I remembered the first time Arthur brought me flowers. Not roses. He said they were too obvious. No, he brought tulips. Pale yellow, slightly bruised at the edges. They're not perfect, he said, but they're yours. That was Arthur. Not perfect, but mine, and kind in ways that mattered. I looked around the kitchen. No one demanding anything, no one measuring my value by my usefulness. Just peace. And toast, and jam, and enough. Wednesday brought a letter from the insurance company. Just the usual annual update. No surprises, no changes. But tucked into the envelope was a leaflet I hadn't seen before. Are you planning your legacy? I sat at the table, the paper open in front of me. I'd never liked that word. Legacy. It sounded like something grand and dusty, not the quiet, ordinary life I'd led. But I knew what they meant. They were talking about money, about what you leave behind. I'd left a lot already, just not the kind that goes in a will. Still, I made a pot of tea and pulled out the old black notebook from the drawer, the one I used when Arthur and I refinanced the house 20 years ago. In it, I started a new page. What I've given. And I began listing. Not exact sums, I didn't need those. Just the things themselves. Nora's college tuition, down payment on their first house, Ellie's school uniforms, Thomas's dental surgery when he lost his job, groceries when their fridge broke, Christmas presents for everyone, every year without fail babysitting, hundreds of hours of babysitting, canceled vacations, missed doctor visits, delayed car repairs. I didn't write any of this out of spite, just clarity. I needed to see it, to face the shape of my giving, what it looked like on paper instead of just in my bones. I turned the page and started a second list. What I've kept for myself. The page stayed mostly empty. 1 pair of pearl earrings. My garden, though I hadn't tended it in years. The small painting over the fireplace. A gift from Arthur. A chair that didn't hurt my back. I stared at the contrast between the 2 pages. Then I closed the notebook and took a long breath. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. Just done. That afternoon, I walked to the lawyer's office. Francis Dwyer, gray suit, slow smile, hands like folded paper. He'd drawn up Arthur's will years ago and sent me a Christmas card every year since. I'd like to make some changes, I said. He didn't ask why. Just opened his drawer and pulled out a folder. It took us nearly 2 hours. I told him everything. About Ellie, about the card from Thomas, about the silence from Nora. I told him about the birthday, the cake, the candle, about the toast and the jam. And he listened. When I was done, he leaned back and nodded slowly. We'll keep it simple, he said. A living trust, primary beneficiary, Ellie Merrick. Contingent provisions for the rest. You don't need to explain any more than that. I know, I said, but I wanted to. We signed the papers. I initialed each page. He handed me a copy in a crisp envelope, and I tucked it into my handbag like it was a seed. Something small, planted late, but necessary. When I stepped outside, the wind had picked up. The clouds were gray, low, heavy, but I didn't feel cold. On the way home, I stopped at the garden center, bought tulip bulbs, pale yellow, just like Arthur used to bring home. Back in the kitchen, I wrote Ellie a short note. Things are changing, love, but not the things that matter. You'll understand someday. All my love, Grandma. I placed it on the mantel, next to the card and the jam, and I felt something shift, like a door finally closing behind me. Not in bitterness, in peace. By Thursday, word had clearly gotten around. It started with a knock at the door. Sharp, insistent. I peeked through the curtain. It was Nora. I didn't open right away. Not out of cruelty, but because I wanted a moment to center myself. To remember who I was now, not the woman who flinched at disapproval, but the one who had started saying no. When I opened the door, she stepped in like she owned the air between us. I just spoke to a lawyer, she said, without so much as a greeting. Ellie? Seriously? I closed the door behind her, slowly. Yes. You're leaving everything to a 14-year-old? I'm leaving everything to the person who's treated me with love. She made a sharp sound in her throat, half laugh, half gasp. You're being petty. No, I said, calm. I'm being deliberate. You think we used you? Is that what this is about? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Oh my God, she said, her voice rising. You're rewriting history. You helped us because you wanted to, because you love us. Now you're what? Keeping score? I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't here to understand. She was here to regain control. That had always been her way. Loud when cornered, sentimental when she wanted something, distant when she didn't. I helped because I loved you, I said evenly. But love doesn't mean endless access. We're your family. And I'm still your mother, but that doesn't mean I'm your safety net. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I stepped into the kitchen. Would you like some tea? I don't want tea. I want... She stopped herself. Exactly. She didn't want tea. She didn't want a moment of grace. She wanted compliance. No, I said gently. You want everything to go back to how it was. But I can't do that. Why not? Her voice cracked a little. Why can't we just start over? Because you never noticed I was fading, I said. Until I disappeared. Silence. She stood in the doorway like a stranger. Finally, she said, What do I tell the kids? What do I tell Thomas? Tell them I love them, I said. Tell them I needed to take care of myself. Tell them the truth. She hesitated. Will you see them? I already do, I said. Ellie's here almost every week. That's not fair. No, I said. But it's honest. She looked down, then up again. You're really not changing the trust? No. Her shoulders dropped, and for a second, just a second, she looked less like my daughter and more like the tired, grasping woman she'd become. I don't understand you anymore. I don't think you ever did. She turned toward the door. I didn't stop her. But just before she left, she said something low, almost too quiet. Do you still love me? I paused, then nodded. Yes, but I've stopped loving the way you treat me. She flinched, and then she left. I sat down at the table, hands wrapped around my cup of tea, untouched, cooling. Outside, the first leaves were starting to fall. Golden, dry, free. Friday morning came in slow and gray. I slept in, not out of laziness, but because I finally could. No errands, no requests, no list of things someone else needed. Just my house, my body, my quiet. I made oatmeal again, with cinnamon this time, and opened the curtains. The trees along the street were shedding faster now, yellow and orange drifting down in slow spirals. Change always starts like that, quietly, without asking permission. Just before noon, the phone rang. Not the landline, the mobile. I glanced at the screen. It was Thomas. I let it ring. He called again at 12:17, then 12:31. At 12:45, he sent a message. "Hi, Edna. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say thank you. For everything. I've done a lot of thinking. And I'm sorry." I stared at the message for a long time. There were no follow-up requests. No guilt trips. Just those words. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I wanted him to sit with that silence. Just for a while. Let it settle. Let it mean something. I spent the afternoon in the garden. I hadn't worked in it in over a year. Not since my knees started their slow rebellion. But today, I didn't care. I wanted to put my hands in the dirt. Wanted to feel something real under my nails. I dug a shallow trench along the back fence, the soil dark and damp. Then I planted the tulip bulbs, the pale yellow ones. Arthur's favorite. One by one, I pressed them into the earth like promises. They wouldn't bloom for months, but I liked knowing they were there, waiting. At some point, a car pulled up. I turned, brushing my hands on my pants. It was Ellie, alone again. No backpack, no folders. Just her, in a hoodie 2 sizes too big, hair pulled up into a lazy knot. "I brought lunch," she said, lifting a brown paper bag. "I was just finishing," I said, nodding toward the dirt. She peered over the fence. "Tulips?" I smiled. "Arthur's favorite." She followed me inside, unpacked sandwiches, 2 sodas, a slice of pie she said she stole from the cafeteria. "I told Mom you weren't changing the will," she said after a while. I glanced at her. "She was really upset," Ellie added. "Said it wasn't right." "And what do you think?" Ellie took a bite of her sandwich, chewed, swallowed. "I think it's your money. Your choice." I nodded. "And I think," she continued, "she's mad because she knows why. Deep down." That surprised me. "She won't say it," Ellie said. "But she knows." I looked at this girl, this bright, kind girl, and wondered where that wisdom had come from. Certainly not from her mother. Maybe from watching too much. From seeing what others pretended not to. "I'm proud of you," I said softly. She looked away, suddenly shy. "I made a list the other day," I added, "of everything I gave and everything I kept." Ellie raised an eyebrow. "Which list was longer?" I laughed. "Guess." She grinned. "Maybe now you can add to the second one." "That's the plan." After she left, I sat with her pie and thought about that. The second list. What I had kept. Now it included my peace, my choices, my garden, Ellie, and soon, my voice. I wasn't disappearing. I was just starting to show up for myself. Saturday came with the first real chill of the season. The kind that settles in your bones and makes you reach instinctively for thicker socks, an extra blanket, something warm and solid. I stayed indoors, tidying drawers I hadn't opened in years. In the back of one, I found a box of buttons, all different sizes and shapes, saved from clothes long given away. I ran my fingers through them. So many small things I'd kept, just in case. Funny how we do that. Hold on to what might come in handy someday, even if it never does. At noon, Ellie called. "Grandma, do you have a minute?" "For you? Always." "I want to ask something, but I don't want to make it weird." "Ask." A pause. Then, "If I wrote something for school about you, would that be okay?" I smiled into the phone. "I suppose that depends on what you write." She laughed. "It's for a personal history project. We're supposed to pick someone we admire, someone who's changed their life." That took me aback. "I haven't changed my life," I said gently. "You have," she said. "You just don't see it yet." I didn't answer right away. My throat tightened. "You don't have to read it," she added. I want people to know." After we hung up, I sat at the table for a long while. Then I got up, went to the closet, and pulled out the old cedar box where I kept Arthur's letters. I chose one at random, folded, aged, still faintly smelling of tobacco and thyme. "Edna, one day they'll stop listening to you, and you'll start believing you have nothing worth saying. When that happens, speak louder, because silence is the only thing they'll ever let you keep." A. I read it twice, then folded it back and slid it into my pocket. In the afternoon, I called the community center. "Hi, I'm wondering if your fall schedule still has any open workshops?" "Let me check," the young man said. "For seniors?" "No," I said. "For everyone." He hesitated. "We have a weekly writing group. Wednesdays, all ages. You interested?" "I am." I signed up on the spot. He seemed surprised. Maybe he thought I sounded too old. Maybe he thought people like me had nothing new to say. Good. Let him think that. Let them all think that. I sat down later that evening with a fresh notebook. Not for lists this time. For words. I didn't know what I'd write yet. A story. A memory. A letter to the version of myself I'd buried for years. But I'd start. Because Ellie was right. I had changed. I'd started telling the truth. And I wasn't done yet. Sunday was quiet again, but it felt different now. Not empty. Not expectant. Just quiet. Like a page between chapters. I spent the morning in the sunroom, that little square of light at the back of the house Arthur used to call your corner. I hadn't sat there in months. Dust had gathered on the windowsill, the cushion covers were faded. But the light was the same. Still kind. I brought my new notebook with me, the one I bought for the writing class. I hadn't written a word yet. I didn't even know how to begin. So I started with this. My daughter thinks I've become bitter. But the truth is, I've just started tasting things for what they are. The words surprised me. I wasn't trying to sound clever. But once they were on the page, I felt them settle somewhere in me. Deep and clean. By lunch, I'd filled 2 pages. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't polished. But it was mine. Around 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I didn't expect anyone. I wasn't dressed for company. Still, I opened the door. Thomas stood there, alone. He held a pie in both hands. Apple, judging by the smell. "I baked," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" He shrugged. "Well, I helped Ellie bake." I stepped aside. "Come in." He looked different, less clipped, less rehearsed. He placed the pie on the counter and didn't ask for coffee or sit down like he usually did. "I came to say thank you," he said. I waited. "For everything," he added. "All of it. The bills, the help, the time." I never said it properly. "No," I said, "you didn't." "I don't have an excuse." "Good," I said. "Because none would have mattered." He nodded, eyes on the linoleum. "I'm not here to fix anything," he said quietly. just to own it. That stopped me. For a moment, I saw the man Ellie loved, not the man who let his wife speak for him, not the man who silently benefited from my giving, but someone trying in his own slow, awkward way. "I appreciate that," I said. He looked up, surprised. I added, "It doesn't change the trust, or what I've decided." "I know," he said quickly. "That's not why I'm here." There was a silence then, but not the brittle kind, the kind that lets something shift. He stayed for 15 minutes. We didn't talk about Nora. We didn't talk about money. We just ate a slice of pie and let the room breathe. When he stood to leave, he said, "If you ever need a ride to that class of yours, let me know." I smiled. "I'll think about it." After he left, I returned to the notebook. Wrote, "Sometimes apologies don't change the past, but they soften the air around it." It wasn't poetry, but it felt like healing. Monday was overcast again, the sky the color of wet cotton, the kind of day that makes everything slower. Thoughts, breath, memory. I spent most of it reading. Not something heavy, just an old mystery novel I'd read before. There's comfort in a story where the truth always comes out, where someone connects the dots and justice arrives by the last page. Life rarely works that way, but books can still pretend for us. Around 4, I heard the familiar creak of the porch steps, then a soft knock. I didn't have to guess. When I opened the door, Nora stood there, hands stuffed deep into her coat pockets, eyes hollow with exhaustion. She didn't speak right away. Neither did I. Finally, she said, "I'm not here to argue." "That's good," I said, "because I'm too tired to win again." That startled a short laugh out of her, or maybe a cough. She looked past me into the house. "May I come in?" I considered, then stepped aside. We sat in the living room, not across from each other, just near enough. "I've been thinking," she said after a while, "about that day, about all the days, really." I waited. "I was so used to you being there, I didn't realize you'd stopped choosing it." That sentence landed differently. I didn't speak. She kept going. "You've been giving me things for decades, not just money, time, space, your presence. I took all of it like water from a faucet. I never stopped to think what it cost you." Still, I said nothing. "But when Ellie told me about the notebook," she continued, "about the writing class, I realized maybe I didn't know you at all. Not anymore." "I think you stopped trying to," I said. Not unkindly, just honestly. Nora nodded. "I've been angry," she admitted, "mostly at myself. But anger's easier when you aim it at someone else." "Yes," I said, "it is." "I can't undo it," she said quietly. "Any of it." "No," I said. "You can't." She looked up. "But I can stop expecting more from you than I give." That moment sat between us like a fragile cup. "You always thought I was strong," she said. "I did," I said, "and I still do. But strength doesn't give you the right to break other people." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She just nodded. "Ellie says you're writing again." "I'm trying." "About us?" "About me," I said. "But of course you're in there too." She looked down at her hands. "I miss how it used to be," she whispered. "No, you miss how easy it was," I said. "For you." That landed. And this time, she didn't argue. When she stood to go, she hesitated by the door. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said softly. "But I've stopped needing you to love me the way I always hoped you would." That truth cracked something. In her. In me. She nodded. Quietly left. And when the door clicked shut, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. Tuesday came without ceremony. The house was still, the kind of stillness that used to ache, but not anymore. Now it felt earned, like a room cleaned after guests leave. Not empty, just quiet again. I spent the morning writing. Nothing grand, just small pieces. Sentences that circled around old memories. Arthur's laugh when he dropped a whole pie face down. Ellie's tiny fingers gripping mine on her first day of preschool. The click of the back gate when Nora used to sneak out as a teenager. They came back like echoes. I didn't chase them. I let them arrive as they pleased. By noon, I had filled 10 pages. I set the notebook down and went to the porch. The tulip bed sat still under the dirt. No signs of life yet, but I trusted it would come. Things bloom when they're ready, not when we demand it. A car pulled up around 3. I recognized it immediately. Ellie. She bounded up the steps with a kind of energy only teenagers have, all urgency and hope. "I brought something," she said, holding out a folded piece of paper. I took it carefully. "It's the essay," she said, "the one for school. I got an A, but that's not why I wanted you to have it." I opened it slowly. Her handwriting filled the page, wide and sure. "The Strongest Person I Know." That was the title. I didn't read it while she stood there. I couldn't have. My eyes were already burning. She saw and wrapped her arms around me tight and warm. "I meant every word," she whispered. "I know you did." After she left, I read it. Every word. She wrote about the birthday, about the silence, about watching her grandmother become small, and then watching her stop shrinking. She wrote about courage, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that says no more without raising its voice. She wrote that she wanted to grow up like me. I cried, not the kind of crying that leaves you empty, the kind that fills. That evening, I placed her essay beside the other letters. Arthur's notes, Thomas's card, my own lists. They weren't trophies. They were truth. My truth. The house was still. The tea was warm. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged in my own story. Not as a character in the background, but as the author. The year passed. Not quickly, but steadily. Like a river that never rushes, but always moves. I turned 75 on a Thursday. I didn't plan anything. Didn't set the table or bake a cake in quiet hope. I didn't expect a call that never came, because I didn't need it anymore. But at 4 o'clock, the door opened anyway. Ellie. And behind her, Thomas, carrying a small box. And behind him, to my surprise, Nora. She looked nervous, holding a single flower, a yellow tulip, slightly wilted, but real. "Happy birthday," she said. I nodded. "Thank you." We didn't hug, but she stayed. That was something. Ellie took over the kitchen like she owned it. We brought cake, chocolate, with real cream. Thomas lit the candle. One. Just one. "I think we can skip the singing," I said, and they laughed. Even Nora, faintly. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them, leaned forward and blew out the flame. No wishes. Just thanks. We ate at the table. No gifts, no speeches. Just 4 people. Complicated, tangled, trying, sharing slices of cake that were too sweet and tea that was too strong. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. After they left, I sat in the living room, Ellie's essay still framed on the mantel, the letters beside it, my notebook resting nearby, half filled now with memories, moments, truth. The garden was dark outside the window, but I knew beneath that cold soil the tulips were still waiting. They'd come in their time, and I'd be here. Maybe quieter now. Maybe smaller in the world's eyes, but not invisible, Never again invisible. So if this story reminded you of someone, your mother, your grandmother, the woman who always answered the phone, who never said no, don't wait. Call her. Bring her cake. Ask her how she is. And mean it. Because she might be lighting her candle alone.